In Unit 9, we're going to go over the topic of testing for rank. We're going to go over the purpose, the phases, the types, the ceremony, and then also the team leader advancements. Now, if you were to get a room and have 20 instructors from various martial arts, and you ask them, what is the purpose of testing for rank? Most likely, you're going to get 20 different answers. This topic of testing for rank really has a wide variety of ideas out there as far as what it is, what its purpose is, and how to do it. And one of the things that we want to do in the Christian Karate is we want to know what our purpose and our focus is, and then make sure that we do that across the board so that there's no confusion as far as the whole idea of testing for rank and how it's done. I want to read for you at the bottom of page 172 an interesting quote. It says this: "Ability is what you're capable of doing. Motivation determines what you do. Attitude determines how well you do it." So if you look at those things, we have the ability, the technique that you or a student are able to do. The motivation then determines what you do. Are we going to keep on doing it? Is it exciting? Is it something that stimulates us, or we have a reason to go forward and continue on? And then your attitude really determines how well you do it. As we get into later on in our curriculum, we talk a lot about fighting spirit, and that's that attitude that determines how well you do it. And we have the ability really to affect every one of those. And what we want to do is we want to affect those in a positive way. It's real easy to affect those in a negative way, and it's fairly easy, if we think about it and we're focused, to affect those in a positive way. So some of the things that we want to do in a test is we want to make sure that it is an encouragement to the student. We want it to be a challenge. We want it to be a time where we can test what they're doing, keep them accountable, but then ultimately at the end, we want it to be an encouragement. Now, over the years of training, I've seen a lot of different tests. I've attended tests from different associations and such and given tests. And I've seen kind of the twofold approach that I've seen. Sometimes the school or the association, their goal was encouragement. And I saw great things happen. And then on the other case, I also saw that the goal wasn't necessarily encouragement, it was discouragement. And maybe we're only going to take the best and we can weed off the people that we don't want. And unfortunately what happened over the course of time is they got rid of a lot of students that could have become excellent students, but they discouraged them early. And so they fell away and they might never get back into martial arts. And so what we want to do is we want to take those students that might not be what we call our A students. You know, the A students are the ones that are there early, they work really hard, they're late, they help with everything. And we want to maybe take the students that are B or C students, maybe the ones that are, they come because they have to, or their parents brought them. And we want to move them up to where they're a B student or become an A student. And if you were to, in the beginning phases of their training, say their first rank, if you were to really just hammer them hard and put them down and fail them on their first test and fail them again, guess what? You're never really going to have that opportunity because most likely they're going to quit. And so we've established a few guidelines in our association to help with that goal of encouragement. The number one guideline is this, is you as a leader need to make sure that your student is ready to test. This is a big thing, to make sure they have their material done, to make sure that they are ready to get in front of everybody and test and to succeed well. I believe that if you have a group of 20 individuals that go to test and all of them fail, I think that their instructor failed as well, because it really puts a lot on the instructor, because did he prepare them well to test? And so to help with that, of course, we do have the rank books, we have the checkoffs, we have a log that will help you to make sure that they're ready to test. So that's the number one thing. Make sure that they're ready to test. Now, in that as well, if they spent a period of time, maybe several months, and they checked something off early on, make sure that there's an evaluation right there at the end to make sure that they are ready to go on all of the material for their test. Now, the next thing is this, and we started this just as a safeguard, and this is kind of a private bit of information that we don't want to share with any of the students. We don't want this to become public knowledge. So make sure that this isn't shared to your students. But this is the basic idea. We don't really want to see anyone fail at the yellow and orange belt level. Okay. So if you think about that for a second, we don't want anyone to fail at the yellow and orange belt level. Now, the only reason that a student will fail on those is if they completely stand up and they say, forget it, I'm done, I'm not going to try anymore, and they walk out of the test. They will fail at that point. However, if they are there and they're working hard, and they've had everything checked off by their instructor, they have a positive attitude, and they give it the best that they can, they might not perform too well at the test, but they need to pass. And that is your responsibility as a leader to make sure that they're ready. And there will be some times maybe where a student is testing and they've had a bad day, or they don't quite feel right, or something of that sorts. And you as a leader, if you see that happening, what you'll need to do is try to make it to where it's not obvious. If you have a group of people, maybe put them in the middle of the back, but make sure that at the end of it that they do succeed and that they do pass, and that it is an encouragement. Also take that time, if you do see the test and there is areas to work on, give them an evaluation, say, hey, you passed, good job, and then later on say, here's some things that we need to brush up on. So those are some things that you need to keep in mind as you are preparing to test your students. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit and say that for a team leader, your yellow belt test is not guaranteed. Okay, so I don't want, some of you might have been thinking, oh great, I'm going to pass my yellow belt test for sure. Well, that's not the case for team leaders. Now, team leaders are on a different road. As a leader, you need to make sure that you have that material down. So you will be submitting your video evaluations, and if you are not up to the standard of a leader, then you will get a notice back, and you'll say, you didn't pass. Here's the reasons why, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what you'll need to do is you'll need to work on those aspects and then resubmit your video test. So you didn't get a free ticket as a team leader, but I think that you understand the concept of, for the student, is for the student's sake, it's a different path than for the team leader's sake. Also, on page 172, we have the phases of testing. Now you can read through those real quick, but the basic idea is this. We want to make sure that the student feels like they've accomplished their rank. What we don't want to do is have a test to where at the end of the test the student went, oh, that was really, really easy. I guess I got my rank. No big deal. That's not what we want at all. We want the opposite. We want it to be where they're sweat and they worked at it and they're like, oh, I gave it my best and it was really, really hard and I passed. And that is what we have found will give them the biggest sense of accomplishment. That'll give them the biggest motivation to move forward. So look through those things as you plan your tests. Plan them well. Okay. Think about, how am I going to make this an encouragement to my students? And of course, in the future, if you do have questions or things arise in your school, check the online resources page, talk to other instructors, and work on how you can make this test fulfill the purpose of motivating your students for the future. On page 173, we have 4 types of testing that might happen in the future. And I just wanted to touch real quick on them so that as you plan in the future, maybe a year from now or 2 years from now, if one of these comes up, that you'll have that mental note that, oh, that's right, we talked about that. Now, I hope that you have read through the entire unit and you will have this resource in the future. But sometimes, as you're going through it and you're going through a new program, things get forgotten and missed. So 2 things real quick. I would like to encourage you to maybe in a month or 2 or 3 reread through the Team Leader Manual. Just kind of refresh and go through some things, because some of the things we talk about don't apply this month or next month. They're going to apply a month or 2 or 3 or 4 months or a year down the road. So read through this as often as you need to remember that. Real quickly here, we have the beginner test. The beginner test is going to be like for kids, tiny tigers, and for the ranks of yellow, orange, and blue. And then we have intermediate tests and advanced tests. So those are kind of self-explanatory. Those are going to kind of change over the course of time. And in the next team leader training that you'll have, a Team Leader Training 2, we're going to be going over the intermediate tests more and the advanced tests. But the thing to consider here is the special considerations test. And this here would be maybe for if we have a special needs groups. We've talked about those before, maybe the elderly, somebody who has an injury or mentally handicapped. Those tests might come up. So just think about that as you're doing the test preparation. If we do have a special needs of any sorts, then you'll need to make allowances for them. On page 174, we go over the ceremony. Now, this is part of that whole process of encouragement. We want to make sure that it's a big deal for the students' families. Now, we do have 2 types of tests, and I want to mention them here real quickly. We have the first test where it's a half Q. This is where it's the halfway mark, and you'll just be putting a piece of tape around the belt, and it just kind of shows that you are progressing. Now, this right here is not a big celebration. This does not really need to have people invited. Now, it can have maybe some personal family, like parents or siblings and such, come and watch. But it's not a huge deal as far as we're going to make it into a ceremony. So the parents can watch, and you'll do kind of a normal class. At the end, that half Q really is only maybe a 10-minute evaluation or such. And then at the end, we'll have them come forward, put on the piece of tape, bow, shake the hands, clap, get a few pictures from the parents, and be done. Now, for the test night, though, for the full ranks, what you'll need to do is have some planning for this. Depending on your location and the people that you have involved, it could be anywhere from, a good-sized celebration with some people, or it could be all the way to where you have a lot of people there and a lot of cameras and maybe a meal afterwards and desserts and everything in between. We have seen everything in between. We have had before a special needs black belt test. It was for an individual in the association that was mentally handicapped, and he has worked hard. He was in the association for years, working hard, and we made a program specifically for him because he was not able to go through the normal program. His black belt, kata, he ended up having to have other black belts there with him, and he kind of followed along, and he did a great job. But for that one, I believe we had hundreds of people. They showed up from the community, people we didn't even know. The parents of the kid invited everyone, and it was a big deal. We even had the newspaper out. We had afterwards a meal and cake, and for him, we actually even got Chuck Norris to write a personal letter to this individual congratulating him for his test, and we presented that to him at his black belt ceremony. So those ceremonies can be very large, but what we want to make sure is that they have some meaning to them for the student. And so you'll need to plan that out. One thing that I would encourage you to consider is to make sure that there's space for people to watch. Make sure that you have extra chairs. Make sure especially that the relatives, maybe parents or siblings, have a great spot to be able to take pictures of what's going on there. Make sure that you take the time at the end of the ceremony to congratulate them. have each person come up individually, bow, shake hands, give them their certificate, tie on the belt, and then what we usually like to do is have all of the other leadership up front as well. So they can go to each one of the leaders, shake hands and bow. After that, we like to put all of the people that tested kind of in a special location, maybe up front or off to the side, have everybody bow to them. At the end, get pictures of the whole group with the instructors, post them on social media, post them online, make a big deal out of it. Because what we really want to do is we want to tell these students that tested that we're proud of them. And part of the way that we can do that is making it a big deal for them. So read through this, think about it, think about what you can do to make that ceremony be a good time and as an encouragement for that student. And the goal is at the end of the test, they're exhausted, they're tired, but they're energized and they're excited, and they can't wait to get into the school the next day to train because they're really excited about everything that happened. Now, unfortunately, one of the drawbacks of you being a team leader is that you're not going to be able to experience what I just described as far as the student experiences in the school for the whole ceremony and the working. And unfortunately, there's no easy way around that. Ideally, it would be great if each one of the team leaders could get together and have a test, maybe at a national headquarters or a camp or such. But unfortunately, that just doesn't work for the locations where people are at around the world. And so we've come up with the online video testing for you as a team leader. Now, the process is fairly simple. There will be instructions online on how to take your video test. There will be specific things that you'll need to do and a specific format and a way that you will provide that material for us. We will evaluate it, and it'll be a pass-fail. If it's a fail, we'll give you some information so that you can work on it and resubmit the test. If it's a pass, you'll get a certificate emailed to you. Unfortunately, that's not as exciting as what we just described for the ceremony. So one thing that we would really like you to do is to take your advancement that you will receive from headquarters as in your ranks and share it with your students, share it with your team leaders. So what we would like you to do is to create kind of a mini ceremony. It doesn't need to be as big and exciting as your student ranks, but it should at least be there for your students to see because you are going in this journey with them. So it would be appropriate after you've received your certification of your next rank that you at the next class with you and your team leaders kind of prepare a little ceremony, and it could be very short at the beginning of class, and you can let them know, say, hey, we tested for our blue belt, and this week, we received our certification from headquarters. Yay! And everybody claps and cheers, and they say good job. And then it would be appropriate that time, because you have received the rank, to show the certificate that you got. And then a team leader will place the stripe on the other team leaders. If it's just you individually, you could say, I got my certificate. Here's my stripe. Tie it on. Good to go. That way, you will have a little bit of that experience because it is a great accomplishment for you as a team leader. In some ways, it's a bigger accomplishment because of the setting that you're in. You're doing it correspondence through video while you're teaching a school. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot more work than the student that is just coming to class and progressing through rank. I'm not saying that their rank isn't important. It's very important, but you obtaining rank is going to be a little bit more challenging than what your student is going through. So make sure that you take the time to share with others, share with your family, share with your school, share with your students and other team leaders the accomplishments that you do, so that in turn you can lead by example and bring them forward in this journey that you're in martial arts. This is the end of Unit 9. Take a look at the homework questions, and this week I really want you to think about, what am I going to do for my first test that I give at my school? Write some ideas down. Think about how we're going to make this be the ceremony and fulfill the purpose of motivating my students for the future.